Hardcore Minecraft, a game mode of Minecraft where if you die, your world gets deleted.
Day 1, we spawned in the jungle. Haven't done this for a long time. It was going to be a dangerous spawn and I was going to try and stay here. So, first thing I did, collect some bamboo. Then punched a tree. Made a crafting table. Made a wooden pickaxe. An awful tool, but necessary for collecting stone. And from the stone I was able to make a furnace, a stone pickaxe, better than our wooden one, a stone axe, better than a no axe, a stone shovel and a stone sword. Then I chopped down another tree. The logs went into cook so we could make some charcoal, and then I went back to chopping trees. The logs from the trees went into cook to make more charcoal, and then from there I was able to make some torches, and I just ran around the area lighting the place up. It was going to be a dangerous place at night, and once I'm dead for good. Real life too. It didn't look like much, but this was going to be home. And as you can see, mobs were respecting the boundaries quite nicely. For the night time, I was going to focus on the larger trees of the area. It's not like I didn't have the time. Day 2, I was out exploring the rest of the biome. Found probably the best thing of the biome, and that was melons. I'm going to make so much money with these. On the shoreline, there looked to be a badlands biome and a potential desert biome. I just focused on the sugarcane. And some cactus, prickly buggers. I went back into the jungle because I was hungry. I was hoping to find some animals to kill for food. But I found a creeper. It's gunpowder. Maybe I could suck on that later. But then I remembered, hang on a minute, I have melons. They weren't the best at satiating hunger, but they did the job. Back home, I made a large chest to empty a lot of my inventory into it, and I decided it was time to go mining. I wanted to get my hands on ores, specifically iron ore. Well, I found a flooded ravine. My water breathing capabilities weren't the best, so what I did instead was just try and, ignore it. But then when I did ignore it, I fell through my staircase at a lower point and came into a lush cave. That wasn't going to stop me. All I did was staircase down and then continue to mine down further into the earth. Only stopping once I'd got to y equals 16, because that's a level that is known to be abundant for iron.
I stumbled across a mine shaft, and there was a suspicious amount of zombies. Turns out there was a mob spawner, and it kind of put me off exploring the mine shaft. However, I did get some music discs.
I didn't emerge from underground until day 5, with a stack and a half of iron to my name. While that cooked, I got in with more tree chopping. Jungle's a hectic place, and the clearer the area is, and the more I can see, the safer it is. When it got dark, I expanded my territory a little bit more, with the help of torchlight, but I guess the boundaries weren't clear enough for some of them. One or two of them got stuck in the trees, absolutely clueless, so I just ignored them and carried on chopping trees, hoping that it wasn't going to come back and bite me. Bright and early the next day, I decided it was time to leave the jungle for a bit and go and explore the other parts of the world, specifically the nearby desert biome. I wanted a village. Best way to search? Get up somewhere high, and then turn the render distance to maximum and see what you can see. Oh, and I spy with my little eye something beginning with V. Village. It was only a small village, but it was also on the other side of this ravine, but there was a section of terrain that bridged across. First things first, I took the hay, then I turned that into wheat, and I turned the wheat into bread, and that bread sustained me while I ran around the place placing torches. I needed this place to remain safe from mobs. I needed the villagers to stay alive. On the horizon there was another village, so I guess if this one didn't work out, I'd have that one to fall back on. But that's just a hypothetical. Of course this village is going to be alright. They're in safe hands. Maybe not the best of hands, but still safe. Well, not really. I just want to utilise them for their goods. I decided it was time to start capturing them one by one. I wouldn't take them back to the base today. Then I captured a second villager. I put him next to the first villager. But then a bloody nitwit got in the boat with him. He's not wanted. This was going to be villager number 3, but I suppose now it's villager number 4. I just ransacked the villager of everything it's worth. The crops, more hay, a brewing stand, a grindstone, a chest full of iron, in which I put on the iron helmet and the iron leggings, more hay, second brewing stand, a chest full of gold and redstone and some more food, a cauldron, and last but not least, an iron golem. And then I sort of sneakily positioned the villagers so they wouldn't be able to see what I was planning, and that was to kill this guy at the back. I don't want a nitwick on my land. Yeah, look, he's looking the other way. He's scared it's going to happen to him. Day 7. I didn't take the villagers back to the base straight away. I wanted to check out the other village. It was a similar story to the last one. I was just there to loot everything they had. This place was a lot bigger than the other village, and had a lot more hay and resources to get my hands on. Honestly, I was running out of inventory space, I was getting so much stuff. Once that village was ransacked, I ran back to my villagers. They had been patiently waiting for me inside the boats, and then I began to take them back. Luckily, the village was quite high up, so getting them down to the water was pretty easy, although unfortunately it was a lake and not the sea. So that meant I was going to have to shovel my way through the last part of the desert to the sea. But to me it just seemed a bit too dangerous to work out here at night, so I just went to bed. Day 8, I continued to shovel through the sand. Now I had a clear path through. From there, I rowed the villager across the ocean, back to the shoreline of the jungle. I didn't go back for the others, I decided to leave him on the shoreline when I ran back to the base, so I could unload my chock-a-block inventory and collect some more torches for lighting up the shoreline. I wanted to get the shoreline lit up so mobs wouldn't spawn here. I didn't want the new member of the team getting brutally murdered in the night. Anyway, I rowed back to the village, picked up villager number 2. It was cutting it close, so I wanted to get him back to the base before mobs spawned in and killed him. Or me for that matter, because if I die, the whole world dies. So my life is extremely important. Parked him up next to his friend. I decided it was too late to go back to the village for the third villager. Instead, I felt a better use of my time would be to prepare the shoreline for a village breeder, so I can start increasing their numbers pronto. Whew. I experienced an absolute disaster day 9. Both my villagers had turned into zombified villagers because of one thing. This guy right here. A trident drowned. Single-handedly ruined my plan. Ow. It's a good thing I'd left the third villager back at the village. He was still safe. Ignore the empty boats. Absolutely nothing to do with your missing friends. Trust me. I wasn't sure if the guy would stay safe or not, so I decided to put him in a little box. I thought that was probably the best thing to do, and then I headed back out onto the water. I was going to need to go back to the second village. I just hoped there were villagers left. I'd broken all the beds, so I don't know if they've abandoned the place. There were actually quite a lot of villagers. Do you want to work for me? I just waited for a volunteer. No one seemed to come forward. Wow. So if I wasn't going to get a volunteer, I was going to force a volunteer. It was only his friends and family he was leaving behind. He was going to have a better life with me anyway. Fortunately, the village was on the edge of the water, so I could get him back onto the open sea. Although that sea didn't seem to connect to the same sea that I'd dropped the other villager back near our base. That was a problem because it was going to make transportation a difficult task. But I would do it. Even if it took me all 100 days, I would do it. The next day I was still building the same path through the desert for the villager to be transported. I hadn't finished the road and made a massive amount of progress. I needed more torches. Now I could have nicked them from the village, but I wasn't sure if I was going to have to call upon the villagers again in case of another freak accident occurred. No, what I did instead was row to land further afield in the hopes of finding another tree. I could see trees in the distance. They're hard to see on screen. I just hoped this guy was going to stay safe. You better still be human by the time I get back. I collected the wood from the tree. I was going to head back to the villager, but I saw there were the nice ripe pumpkins. I thought I had melons at home. Why not take the pumpkins as well? And that way when we got farmers, we'll be able to trade both of them for lots of profits. When I got back to the boat, he was still human. I put the oak logs into a furnace. Again, we needed charcoal. And saw this guy was trying to infect my villager again. Well, it was going to happen. Not on my watch. I got your back, buddy. Don't you worry. But don't turn your back on me. Torches now in hand, I went back to working on the path. As I was progressing with the tunnel, I turned around to find a raid captain behind me, just watching me, silently, kind of creepily. I ignored him and continued work, hoping he'd go away. Well, so much for ignoring him. They all started chasing me. So I made the big brain play of placing some blocks in front of them, and then I hoped they would just take care of the raid captain through friendly fire. And they did, and made it through to the other side. Oh, the villager was still in one piece. Went back and grabbed him, and then slowly transported him through the road. We made it to the other side. Next morning, I made it back to the jungle shoreline, uncovered our other villager. He was doing fine. Probably his pupils shrank massively with the inburst of light. Then we could begin work on the villager breeder. As you can see from the layout, it wasn't massive, but it didn't need to be. So I built up the walls until they were 3 high. Then I let the villagers out of their boats, because they weren't going to be going anywhere. As you can see, they loved the place, and I started mapping out where I wanted a dropship to be. There was going to be a long hole in the middle of the breeder that I'd be able to push villagers down, and they'd fall into an underground cavern, or chamber, that would actually be a trade hall. And then I'd be able to put them to work. Back at the base, I picked up all of the beds I'd taken from the villagers, and one by one added them to the villager breeder, so that the villagers would get a good night's rest. I'm not a monster. Sleep deprivation is no joke. While the villagers slept, I worked on the drop shaft. It was a fair drop from on top, and once I was happy with the distance, I started creating the chamber itself. The only problem is, once I was down here, I had no way of actually getting back up, so I had to tower back up. I'd ran out of torches again. Before I went and grabbed more, I turned a load of the hay bales into hay, and then the hay into bread. Why? Because villagers love bread. Look at that, so predictable. You can't stop the aphrodisiac power of the bread. Back at the base, I took out the iron ingots we'd smelted, although not all of it had cooked. So I had to put more fuel into the furnace so it could continue. We already had an iron helmet and some leggings from the village, so I focused on making some footwear and a chest plate. Now we had a completed set of iron armour. I went back to the drop shaft, mined downwards again, and continued where we left off, which was turning this place into a chamber fit for a trade hall. The annoying part was where we were expanding into was part of an underground flooded cave system, so it was going to mean a lot of placing blocks and a lot of taking them out to drain it. Day 14 and I'm starting to carve out the trade hall itself. The chamber the villagers are going to be falling into is a fairly decent sized space. The trade hall is just going to start off small, and then as we acquire more villagers we will expand it as we go. The trade hall we carved out was enough for 8 villagers. Not many, but it will be a start. As for how I get out of this place, I figured it would probably be best if I actually created a staircase all the way back up to the surface. Except I came up under the ocean. Fairly disappointing, but I figured it's here now, I might as well continue with it. I did it, and now we had a way to get back to the surface and back to our village breeder if we needed to, which looked atrocious from the outside, but it is what it is. And the population had expanded somewhat. Now we had 6 villagers. I did the sleep for a few seconds and then get up trick to stop phantoms from spawning in. Then I made a couple of trap doors to put over the top of the drop shaft, mostly to trick the villagers into thinking there's a block here, when actually there's not, and they're going to be falling down. When you leave the villager breeder, you're greeted with nothing but forest. Now my base is straightforward from here as the crow flies, so I figured maybe it would be a good idea to get some sort of path put in place. The next day I thought I'd go a step further by putting in slabs. I mean, you can't deny this looks a lot more path-like. Oh yeah. This just reeks of civilization. Thought about feeding the villagers, but then I looked around. There's actually quite a few of them. So I decided to aquaman it down the chute, make an infinity pool, and then from there create a pool for the villagers to fall into. And of course the water had to be absolutely level. Not for the villagers' safety, but to keep me happy. On my way back up to the breeder, I decided to improve the staircase a little bit. Then I broke the villagers' beds and pushed them into the boat, broke the boat, and opened the trapdoors. Goodbye. But then a little bit of paranoia told me he was escaping, so I dropped down. And he was trying to escape. I knew it. And I did the same again. Place a boat, break a bed, shove a villager into it. There we go. Shove a villager into it. So smooth. And he just threw himself off. I got a 3rd villager. In total, there were 3 of them I decided to send to the trade hall, or what was shortly going to become a trade hall, or what was going to become the trade hall. They didn't know it, but I had big plans for them. I had predetermined rows for the 3 villagers that I had captured. However, for one of them, I needed a spider. Day 16, I used a string from the spiders to create a loom, and alongside a composter and a fletching table. The loom was one of 3 job site blocks to convert these 3 villagers into a farmer, a fletcher, and a bed sheet making maker. I opened the gate for them. They were slow to accept the offer. First I traded with the fletcher. The farmer didn't have the trades I wanted, so I had to reset him until I got the bread trade. Not only is he good for food, but he's easy to level. The shepherd also didn't have the trades I wanted. I reset him until I got the shear trade, only because it's easy to level him. I trapped all of them with blocks so they wouldn't escape, but I didn't like how they looked, so instead I opted for the trap door method of trapping them. It looked a lot cleaner, plus I could shut them in so I wouldn't have to talk to them. Anyway, I focused on getting the farmer up to the next level, in the hope he would trade pumpkins. And he did. So I traded the 12 pumpkins I had for 2 extra emeralds, and then I focused on leveling the shepherd. He'd sell pink wool at the apprentice level. The level after he sold beds, but I didn't have enough emeralds. Still, the pink wool could be turned into beds and they could be put into the villager breeder. At night, I started working on a pumpkin farm, or what was to be a pumpkin farm, seeing as pumpkins are probably going to be our best money maker for the time being. Stupidly though, I traded all the pumpkins to the villagers, so I couldn't actually start a pumpkin farm. In fact, annoyingly, it meant I had to go and search for some more. My hope was to go back to the biome I found them in originally, all 2,000 blocks away from home. But then I got distracted by an acacia village and acacia biome. They had melons, not pumpkins. but I'd still take them. And beds. And a saddle. Village ransacked, I went back to searching for pumpkins. It didn't take long to find some. The orange colour sticks out like a sore thumb. There was a part of me that didn't want to go back to the base and just set up home here. I mean, look at the terrain. I mean, if this was real life, I'd be gasping right now. On the way back, I was also chopping a few birch trees just so we could get some saplings in case we wanted to grow the things back at base. Having collected the pumpkins, I went home. I didn't get home until halfway through the night. First thing I did, get those pumpkin seeds planted. I added the beds I got from the acacia village to the villager breeder, and then despite the villagers already breeding today, I decided to throw them some more bread. They would breed more. You will procreate and you will like it. All of you. Decided to shovel a load of dirt. I wanted to expand the pumpkin farm. Once my shovels had broke, I went to placing the dirt at the farm. Had a couple of gardening enthusiasts join me. Unfortunately for them, I work alone. The pumpkin seeds I planted hadn't grown and weren't close to being fully grown for a few days yet, so in that time I might as well expand the farm as much as possible. I mean, as I said before, this is going to be a real money maker. I know I said it would take a while for the pumpkins to grow, but the next day one of them actually had. Before the rest of them grew, I thought it was a good idea to probably get trapdoors in place to put torches on, because at the moment I had torches placed on the dirt itself, and all that was going to do was get in the way of the pumpkins growing. Like birthday candles on the cake, the torches were in exactly the right position. A few more pumpkins had grown, so I harvested them as well with my trusty stone axe and planted them for the next generation of pumpkins to come. Although the purpose of this farm was to make money from farmers, it needed to get up to maximum capacity, which is why I was going to continue to replant the pumpkins rather than sell them to the farmers. While I waited for more of them to grow, I decided to clear out some of the trees that were next to the villager breeder. It was still very thick jungle around these parts. I wanted to completely deforest the biome. He has no idea I'm here. Here I come, kitty. Well, well, well. Looks like I've made a friend. Never mind. The next day, it was clear to see there had been some progress in the way of tree removal. But pumpkins called my name, so I was back over at the farm farming whatever had grown, and then of course planting said pumpkins. With not much else to do, I decided to go back to tree farming for the rest of the day. The next morning I ran back to the pumpkin farm, and again a few more had grown, this time 19, which converted into 76 seeds. I decided to go back to the trade hall via the stairs this time rather than dropping in on them, and en route I decided to improve the staircase a little bit more, heightening it to a point where I wouldn't whack my head on it every time. Pumpkins might not be ready for trading, but we had a lot of wood to turn into sticks for trading, and I was able to buy a boatload more beds. The beds went into the breeder, and then I fed them. The next day I rushed back to the pumpkin farm again, harvested the pumpkins of course, like always, planted more pumpkins in the available spaces, and then we expanded the farm with the dirt we'd collected the day before. Unfortunately it was thundering, so I had to deal with quite a few mobs that kept coming for me. The farm was starting to take shape nicely. The villager population was coming along nicely too. I made another 6 iron shovels. By the next morning I was still shoveling dirt. I wasn't going to stop until all these iron shovels were broken. This is all the dirt I'd managed to collect with all the 6 shovels. Pretty nice amount. Of course the pumpkins had been growing nicely, but I didn't have the inventory space to harvest them. So I went to work putting that dirt to use to expand the farm some more. Day 24, I was still placing dirt at the pumpkin farm. This thing was going to be huge. Progress update on the farm. I've got in the number of lanes I want to have for the pumpkins. I still need to extend the farm by 64 blocks backwards, not for any particular reason other than I want to. As you can see, I've sort of built around the island in the centre there. At some point I am going to have to take it out, but that would be at a later date. First I've got to harvest the pumpkins. I didn't replant them. Instead what I did was work on getting the trapdoors placed for the torches. Day 25, a quarter of the way through this video, I was hoeing all the dirt we'd put in. It took all day to get all of the dirt hoed, but once we had, it was just a case of getting the pumpkin seeds into place. And as you can see by my inventory, there's a lot of them. We're going to have a lot of pumpkins to harvest. I didn't actually have enough seeds to bring the farm to maximum capacity, so I went back to farming pumpkins again. Day 26, with the pumpkins harvested, I was able to get enough seeds of them to fill in the available space left on the farm. I'm trying to focus on one thing at a time, which is why I've been so hell-bent on getting this farm finished. There wasn't really enough pumpkins for it to be worth my time to farm them, so instead I decided to spend the rest of the day chopping trees. You can clearly see how much progress we've made with making the area safe. Early next morning I finished chopping up a big tree I was in the middle of, and then as per usual I went back over over to the pumpkin farm and we farmed the shit out of those big boys. They were bursting at the seam full of pumpkin juice. Exactly what a farmer would want, and I traded those pumpkins for 12 emeralds. And then he wanted to trade some more, so I traded some more, giving us a total of 24 emeralds. That doesn't sound like a lot, but when you add it to our 1 emerald from earlier, ho, now we're cooking with 25. But you have to keep in mind that was just for the 1 villager. Imagine if we had more than 1. Imagine if we had 2. Or what about 3? 4 maybe? Can't be as good as 5, right? For the 4 villagers I sent down, which were going to be additional farmers, so farmers 2, 3, 4 and 5, I put the composters out for them ready, because I knew as soon as I opened these gates, they'd be raring to go. One of them had the trade I want, the bread trade. Unfortunately, after I broke them and reset them, they wouldn't actually become farmers. As you can see from the sky, it's kind of too late in the day. Day 28, it was back down to the trade hall. I went about resetting the farmer's trade until I got the bread trades for each of them. It took a bit of time, but eventually I got 1, 2, 3, 4 of the new villagers with the bread trade. Now I needed to see if they had the pumpkin trade. I managed to level 2 of the farmers to apprentice level. One of them had the pumpkin trade, and the other one did not. I'd have to take care of this one. Traded sticks with the Fletchers to get more emeralds. Then I used those emeralds to level up one of the villagers, and then level up the other villager. Fortunately, they both had the pumpkin trade, so they'd both be staying. It was only the one that didn't. Back up in the villager breeder, I took another villager, and again sent him down to see his friends. He was to be made a toolsmith, but just in case he didn't have all the tools I wanted, I got a second villager. I ran back to my base, which by base I'm still meaning just the 2 furnaces, 3 large chests and a crafting table. Picked up the iron, made a couple of smithing tables, and placed one of them into the trading hall. I didn't have enough space for a second one, and one of them became a toolsmith. He sold shovels and axes, and after some trading, he still sold shovels and axes. I didn't have enough emeralds to level him up. But fortunately for me, I'm a man prepared, and I traded sticks with the Fletchers, and then bought some more axes from the toolsmith. Before you knew it, we were leveling. Thanks to the iron, I managed to get him through apprentice level, and thanks to the iron again, we got him most way through journeyman, and just finished him off with a couple of diamond hoe buys. That meant he was expert level, where I could now buy diamond axes and diamond shovels. I was 1 short of a diamond axe. So I raced back up to the surface, harvested a few pumpkins, descended back down to the trade hall, traded said pumpkins, and was able to buy an Unbreaking 2 diamond axe. I bet you can guess where I spent the rest of my night. Next day I was down with my guys again in the trade hall, selling those pumpkins for some big money. I also trapped the blacksmith inside his little cubby hole so he'd never be able to leave. And then I traded the rest of the iron to get him to master level, where we can now buy a diamond pickaxe. So I bought the diamond shovel we wasn't able to afford from yesterday, and then the diamond pickaxe we've just been offered now. Then I traded away the rest of the pumpkins. And then I decided to expand the trade hall. 4 farmers was nice to have, 4 because I'm not counting this guy who doesn't want to trade pumpkins. Just imagine what we could do with, I don't know, say 15, 20 of them. Imagine the amount of money we'd be making. Not only that, once we get a melon farm set up as well, we'd really be raking it in. The new expansion would allow for 20 more villagers, 10 per side. And I'll be honest, I intended to make all of them farmers. The spare villager I tried turning into a farmer, but it had become too late again in the day. I'd have to wait until tomorrow. Still, we'd made some considerable progress when it came to the trading hall. Next day, I was up in the villager breeder and I decided to trap 2 villagers in a boat. Reason being is because I wanted to try something a little bit more sneaky. That was to place hay bales around this in the hopes that villagers will just decide to walk over and drop themselves into the drop shaft. That's the hope. And with 2 remaining in the boat, that means if every one of these villagers actually falls into the drop shaft, at least we still have 2 up here we can breed from and start the process again. And just to set an example, I decided to drop down myself. The villager had become a farmer. He didn't have the bread trade, unfortunately. Not that it mattered, we just had to reset his trades until he was a farmer with the bread trade. I only traded a 1 to lock him in, and it turned out we got ourselves another villager. Another 2 villagers. Damn, they love this place. So I set up another 2 composters for the new arrivals. Killed the iron golem that was getting in the way. Surprisingly, the drop shaft trick was actually working because we got ourselves another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 farmers, all with the bread trade. I took my time leveling every single one of them to see if they would offer the pumpkin trade. Then, simply because of the rate in which I was acquiring villagers, I decided to expand the trade hall some more. The expansion would again allow for another 20 villagers. I decided to spend the night shoveling dirt again. I decided to skip out on the villagers the next day and head back to the pumpkin farm. I wasn't going to mine the pumpkins, I just wanted to expand the farm farm size. I had a lot of dirt that needed using up. I had nowhere near the amount of dirt needed, but rather than go collect some more, I thought I'd take a break and farm some pumpkins. And then when I did go to collect dirt, at least these would be growing again in the meantime. I was still farming pumpkins the next day. The new axe was great, don't get me wrong, but I didn't have the ability to insta-break the pumpkins, and with this amount, it was not getting done quickly. The farm netted me 18.5 stacks of pumpkins, which was kind of crazy when you think that the farm was only operating at about 50% of the capacity I wanted it to. When I went down to the trade hall, it looked like the villager drop shaft was working pretty nicely. There was villagers everywhere. In fact, some might say too many. It was chaotic. Went back above ground, shut the gates, took out the hay bales, and fed the villagers a little bit more. I needed to replenish their numbers. Before we traded the pumpkins, I wanted to see how many jobless villagers we actually had. I counted 11. Then I traded the pumpkins. Then I went through all of the new farmers to see which ones had the bread trade. The next day I was back in the trade hall trying to get the farmers trapped into place. That way we'd be able to go through which ones we wanted and which ones needed to be exterminated. Back up top side, I decided it was a good idea to feed the villagers again. Because so many of them have fallen down the drop shaft, I needed to ensure that the population flourished again up here before I could take some more. Now, as far as the farmers were concerned, their life was set. However, as we both know, the ones that didn't offer the right trade, that wasn't going to be the case. So it was back out to the desert where I remember seeing the lava pool. Took a couple of buckets of lava, went back into the trade hall where the farmers were at, and then went through them one by one. When I found an apprentice level farmer or higher that didn't offer the pumpkin trade, well, he had to go. No point keeping dead weight, that's what I say. Now, the great thing about using lava is that it doesn't actually come up as a player kill. When night came, because I couldn't reset villager trades, I was back tree farming. Oh, it's another day. Guess what I'm doing today? Back down in the trade hall. Why? Because I had some villagers to sort. There were still a couple of guys that didn't actually have the trades I want. For instance, this guy who has potatoes and beetroot. Now all I had to do was go through the remaining villagers I hadn't actually leveled up to the next level, and then check if they cooperated with the pumpkins. If they didn't, it was business as usual. Day 35, I decided to do something a little bit different. I decided to head back down to the mines. Except I wasn't going to be stopping at Y=16, I was going to go to the bottom of the earth. I wasn't actually searching for diamonds, although I did find some quite nicely. I was actually heading down primarily for deep slate. I wanted to build a house and I thought the block might be a good block to use. Like I said, primarily I was down for deep slate, but it was always nice when you came across diamonds. I kept going until my pickaxe broke. The next day I was back on the surface building my house, except then I placed some blocks where I didn't want them to be and I couldn't break them because I had no pickaxe. So I stopped briefly at the villager breeder to place some more hay so villagers would fall down the track. In the trade hall I bought another pickaxe, diamond of course, and then I went back to house building. As you can see, I'm actually using deep slate tiles. I think they look nicer than just deep slate. They're probably one of my favourite deep slate blocks. Now, I know what you're thinking, it's just a black box. Well, you are completely wrong. It's actually my home. But what you've got to remember is it's only going to get better from here. A roof, for example, is going to make the thing look 10 times better. The next day, I was still working on the roof. I find stairs really quite inconvenient to place. Maybe inconvenient's the wrong word. More awkward than anything. Who's laughing now? Look at the magnificence of this architecture. I think really the roof is too large for the actual building. It looks maybe a bit more barn-like than anything, but it's still an improvement. The question now is how to improve upon this. Like I said, I do actually think the roof is too large for the building, so my fixture was to dig the ground down and then I could make the building larger. I wasn't going to have enough deep slate tiles for this, but I was trying to add to the building of our house to make it taller, so that it was more proportional with the roof. Believe it or not, it wasn't far off, but that still wasn't enough. I went back down into the mines again the next day, except for on the way I decided to improve the staircase. Improve it by making it higher. Higher so I wouldn't hit my head. It's getting bloody sore. It also slows my descents in a sense, and I can't be having that. On my way down I found some more diamonds, but when I did get to the bottom of the world to continue deep slate mining, instead I decided to work on the staircase some more. I still had stair blocks left over from the roof of the house, so I figured why not put them into the mine staircase. Running up and down these stairs were going to be a dream. With the stage set, I could get back on with deep slate mining. Oh yeah, look how quick I was flying up these stairs, like a rabbit out of a warren. I didn't stay underground for long, long, just enough time for me to grab the amount of deep slate needed for the house. Okay, look, I'll admit, it's not much better, but it is still a little bit better. At the village of Breeder, numbers of villagers had decreased dramatically. Looking down the drop shaft, I could see why. It was like being on public transport down there. It was packed with villagers. So I shut the trapdoors, and then headed off on an adventure. I headed back out to the lava pool, except it was still night, so mobs were around. I was there for obsidian, and that's what I did. I used the water bucket to turn the lava into obsidian, and then very, very slowly I mined the obsidian. Consumed the entire lava pit, and 57 obsidian blocks later I was heading back home. As it was turning night, I expanded the territory around my base a little bit more with torchlight. I wanted to get a full enchanting setup. For that I was going to need books, and for books I was going to need a lot of paper, and to get paper I needed to get sugarcane planted. Like always, I needed something to do to pass the time at night, and for me there were still way too many trees in the area. It was going to be a long time before I got a tree-free jungle, and I decided to spend the next day tree farming too. I just wasn't making as much progress with it as I'd like, despite having felt like I chopped down half the forest. Day 41, I headed back to the villager trade hall. There were a lot of villagers, so I let them all out and began getting composters placed. But when I turned around, none of the villagers had actually come. They did slowly make their way through. Seems to be a bit of a bottleneck at the gate, so I opened up a few more. A couple of them I had to push out because they didn't know how to use their legs. Seriously man, just get out. From there, rather than trade with them, I tried to trap as many of them in their cubby holes as possible. It just meant when we came to killing off unwanted ones, it would be so much easier. And believe it or not, after all the villagers were in, we still had 3 composters spare. I'd left the gate open up in the breeder, so I guess one villager had already fallen in. That meant we now needed 2 more. I say gate, I actually mean trapdoor. So I got another 2 in the boat, broke the boat, and then said goodbye to the villagers. 4 villagers somehow. And then I shut off the trapdoor so no more would drop down there. All what was left to do was to make sure the villagers that were left were well fed. Then it was just a case of going through them one by one and seeing which ones had the bread trade. Not many of them seemed to. When night rolled around, I went back to the pumpkin farm to expand it. I knew I wouldn't have enough dirt to expand the farm to the size I wanted, but every little helped. The next day I finished up placing the dirt I had on me at the pumpkin farm, and then I decided to stay and farm as many of the pumpkins as I could. I say as many as I could because my axe had about 30% durability. I've been planning to go back to the trade hall and reset the villagers' trades that I didn't want, but I didn't actually have any money, so I needed the pumpkins to trade to the already established farmers, and then use that money to level the new villagers I wanted to keep. Believe it or not, I almost farmed the entire lot. I mean, I know pumpkins have now regrown, but yeah, we got a lot of pumpkins. Obviously we went to the trade hall to make money. Believe it or not, it took a full day to harvest the pumpkins and 2 minutes to sell them all. The last thing I did for the night was to buy another diamond axe. The next day it was about going through the villagers and resetting the trades that I didn't want, as per usual. Such as this guy, a farmer and novice offering a carrot and beetroot trade. Well, I didn't want that. What became apparent to me was because I had more villagers than I did composters, sometimes I'd be waiting around for them to turn into farmers, so I thought it would be best to maybe trim the herd a little bit. But once I had the right amount, all it was a case of doing was once again resetting the farmers' trades until they were giving me the ones I wanted. Then after I'd reset their trades, I did my best to level them all up to see if they offered pumpkin or pie. Went over to the house and I made a little door. Then I made a makeshift staircase on one side of the wall that went up into the attic. The next day, that's where I made my nether portal. On the other side, it seemed like they were in a crimson forest biome, high up in a crimson forest biome. I didn't think I wanted to be that high up, so I decided to lower the portal, making another one at exactly the same coordinates, except this one was just lower. So I went back up to my other portal, broke it. Thing is, I accidentally put all of the bread I had on me into my chest, so now I was in the nether without a way to replenish my health. I had to be careful because of these big boys. They did give up some tasty meat, but I wasn't going to eat it raw. I don't have the stomach of the Liver King. I slowly made my way back down to the other portal, lit it. I was kind of scared, so I went back home. And fortunately for me, it reconnected with my portal back in my base. I also picked up some food while I was there, made a gold helmet so I wouldn't attract unwanted attention in the nether, and then went back in. I wanted to eventually get a full nether hub set up, connecting all the different parts of the world together, and I decided that this nether portal right here was going to be the center of that nether hub. And so I got on designing the portal that I see a lot of players use for the center of their nether hub, hallway portal. And in the center I lit 3 of the sides up, so all of them were lit up now, and and then I just tested by going through another one. I returned back in the base, so it worked. However, the nether was giving me uneasy feelings, so I decided to leave it there for the day. Day 45, dirt collecting continued. Day 46, I was running back towards my pumpkin farm. After spending all night collecting dirt, I was confident I was going to have enough to finish this farm. Alright, all dirt was placed at the pumpkin patch. It's a lot of space. Although, having said that, technically it wasn't, because I still had these islands to take out. I thought about putting it off to another day, but then I thought if I keep putting it off, it's not going to get done. Might as well just get it out of the way now. Day 47. I was filling in the gaps of the farm that sand had been taken out from. Alright, got the first section filled in, but I ran out of dirt on the second section. I couldn't quite believe it, even after all the dirt collecting we'd done. I returned with more dirt in hand, got all of said dirt placed, filled in the parts of the trenches that needed filling with water, put in the trapdoors, of which there were a lot of. I was surprised to find I ran out of them, so I had to run back to the base, restock, and run back. Day 48. Placing slabs had taken up all of the previous day, so now I was having to place the torches on top of them to make sure the farm was sufficiently lit. Not only to prevent mobs from spawning in, but also to encourage pumpkin growth during the night. Then it was time to hoe the dirt. I knew with my hoe's durability it was going to break, so I'd invested in a backup. The hoeing had taken up the remainder of the day, so the next day I was back to harvesting pumpkins because I didn't have enough seeds to fill the new part of the expansion. I didn't harvest all of the pumpkins, only enough to turn into the seeds needed. I didn't want to waste the rest of the pumpkins on seeds I wouldn't be able to plant. And then I went back to pumpkin farming. Half of the farm that I'd already harvested before had already regrown as well. I'd taken so long. All of these were destined for profits, although I stopped when I realised I'd missed a massive section of the expansion. This is where the sand island had been. Pumpkins harvested, I was out collecting the sugarcane I'd grown. Next morning I decided to head out east. I hadn't explored this way and I was in search of some cows. I wanted leather. I found a pig, not exactly a cow, but it would be food. On the other side of the mountain I just climbed, I could see an ocean and some more jungle. However, there was a forest biome and a bit further looked to be an acacia biome. 100% there's got to be some cows over there, and I found one basically straight away. But no leather. Found some wolves. I'd like to take them home, but I didn't have the means to tame the beasts. Horses? But I didn't want horses, I just want some cows. Why is it whenever you want cows, you can never find them? More sheep? Eventually, I found some cows. I left the baby. Not because I'm a good person, but because I couldn't gain anything from it. After that, I decided to head home. It was sunset, and as capable a player as I am, as you all know, even I was a little worried with being so far from home. I made it back to the base with my head still firmly on my shoulders. With the sugarcane from earlier, I made a load of paper, and then with the 5 leather I owned, made 5 books. And you know what I did with those 5 books? I'll tell you what I did. I made a bookshelf. And you know what I did with that bookshelf? I made myself a lectern. You'll come to see why I made a lectern. And I got to work on a second trade hall. A second trade hall because it was going to be next to the first trade hall. And really, if anything, that just made it part of the first existing trade hall. But it's just a second building. Although, the next day, work came to a brief stop. There was still a lot of farmers roaming about freely, and that was unacceptable. They needed to be trapped in their cubby holes where they wouldn't get in people's way, i.e. my way. Next was the step of going through them all, one by one, to check which ones had the pumpkin trades and which ones didn't. If they didn't, I'd open up a trapdoor indicating that this villager needed to go. 9. That was the number of villagers defying my reign. And if you let a rebel cause get too out of hand, it's going to take over. I couldn't allow that. I've got to say, a little bonus, I love how their little nose lights up. Like a doorbell. Or a Christmas light. Look at it. Look at it light up. But seriously, this isn't a laughing matter. They need to die. Hello people, I am looking to hire. I say looking to hire. I have 9 golden opportunities for making money. That's right. All flood to me. Great opportunities. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here were the new workers, all raring to go. I wasn't sure if they'd assign themselves to the dead farmers' composters, so I broke them and put in some new ones. You know, just in case if it was like a respect sort of thing. I didn't want their moral compass getting in the way of my ability to profit. The next day, I opened the floodgates and allowed them to go through to their new life. As you could see, it's exactly what they wanted. Again, it was the tedious tasks of trying to get them to sell the bread. Then once I'd sorted them all out, it was just a case of leveling. Of the 9 that came in, 3 of them needed to go. it is what it is, and for the night time I went back to working on the second building of the trade hall. Day 54. I needed to get a few more farmers now to replace the dead ones. However, I wanted to try and finish the trade hall building too before I did anything else. Unfortunately for me, one of the outer sides of the new trade hall building bordered onto a flooded cave. It meant quite a lot of my time went into floodproofing. In the breeder, it seems someone forgot to leave one of the gates open. What idiot did that? I wanted to get the replacement farmers sorted, but the next day I needed to go back to the pumpkin farm and harvest the pumpkins, mainly because I needed more emeralds, and for more emeralds I need more pumpkins, hence why I was here. And now that our farm was so much larger, we should be making double the profit. In fact, a combination of the farm being so large and my axe being so slow meant we were only halfway through when the moon started to rise. I guess the farm was larger than I thought, because the next day I was still at it, and I still had another 2 full lanes left. There was a wandering trader who came to visit. Normally I kind of ignored them or killed them, but I was just kind of interested to see what he had, and he had a pale oak sapling and some pointed dripstone, and that's when I knew I needed to trade from him. Ran back after I got emeralds for all his pale oak saplings and all his, well, some of his pointed dripstone, and because he had trades I wanted, I let him keep his life. I hadn't actually explored the new biome yet, so I decided to plant a few of the trees. I wanted to see what they look like. Also, when it came to the pumpkin farm, look how long it took. I only just finished farming them, and the first and second lanes where I started were almost full again. I gotta say, I can't wait for a good efficiency enchantment. Anyway, going back to the pumpkins, this was the entire harvest for the farm. I knew there were a couple of farmers missing from the trade hall until we replaced them, but I wanted to get these pumpkins traded for money. I was running low on emeralds, and my next mission was to get a load of librarians so we could start enchanting our gear, and then the game would really open up to us. Not a bad amount of money to make. Next day, I dosed some villagers. I only wanted one, so I let the one who failed all by himself. The plan was to make him a librarian. He became one, except he didn't have the trade I wanted, and I wasn't going to look at the book in case it was good. There was one specific trade I was after, and he had it now. The bookshelf trade. And I bought 12 of those bad boys. However, for whatever reason, when he reset his trades, he was charging more for them. I'm currently his one and only customer, and he's already charging me an extortionate amount. That's business for you. But just so he wouldn't get any ideas, I bought a single lantern for him. Maybe he'd change his mind. There was enough space for an additional 43 librarians. Once he'd got a better idea of the economy of these parts, I bought the rest of the bookshelves for him. Now I had 24. And let's be real, a trade full of librarians was going to take some time. Librarians with the enchants I wanted as well. So in the meantime, I crafted myself an enchanting table. I hadn't made one for a long time, normally just relying on the villagers. Unfortunately, the tools I bought from the villagers were already enchanted, so I had to use a grindstone to disenchant them. But once they were, we could see what sort of juicy enchants were on offer. Efficiency 4 plus something else. Yeah, sure, I'll take it. Silk Touch efficiency 4. The pickaxe I put in was giving me Unbreaking 3 and efficiency 4 as well. And I got myself a new diamond shovel, or gave me Silk Touch. That was not so good, I didn't want that. So I put it onto the shovel with no durability, and it turned out to actually be really good. It was Silk Touch efficiency 4 and Unbreaking 3, so I was kind of kicking myself. So when I tried the other one, it was giving me efficiency 4 and Unbreaking 3, so almost as good, but just without the Silk Touch. Now that we had an enchanting table, I headed back down into the mines. To the Y=16 layer. I'd seen some lapis here before that I hadn't been able to pick up because I hadn't had an iron pickaxe. Now, however, it wasn't safe. Next day, I made a blast furnace. I put it into the trade hall and opened up the gate, hoping an adult villager would come out and not a child. However, like always, they needed assistance to get through the gate. I of course leveled him as much as I could until I was able to buy diamond armor from him. Some diamond leggings, some diamond boots, and then a diamond chest plate and a diamond helmet. However, I wasn't done yet. I also bought a bow and a few arrows. I also bought a new hoe because mine was close to breaking. Then I disenchanted all of the armor I'd just bought. They didn't have bad enchants on, but I felt we could get better. And then one by one we enchanted everything. The diamond helmet, we got fire protection 3 and respiration 2. The chest plate, we got blast protection 4 and unbreaking 3. The leggings, we got blast protection 4 and unbreaking 3. And the boots, we got protection 3. Then I also did the golden helmet because we're going into the nether. We got protection 4. Diamond hoe, we got silk touch. The bow, we got power 4 and unbreaking 3. I also had a couple of diamond leggings spare from where we were leveling up the villager. So I enchanted them. One of them I got protection 3 and unbreaking 3. And the other I got unbreaking 3. So protection 3, unbreaking 3 was the one I chose. Just like that, I had a full set of diamond armor. While I was at it, I also made a diamond sword and enchanted that while I was at it, and it was Bane of Arthropods. Wow, how lucky. Still, it was a diamond sword, and a diamond sword was better than the iron one we were using, so positives, I guess. I went to the pumpkin farm because I wanted to try out the new axe, see if the efficiency 4 enchantment would let us insta-mine. and it didn't. We were going to need efficiency 5. Shovel, on the other hand, would let me instant mine dirt. I didn't think I was going to be back at the pumpkin farm so soon, but I'd spent all my money, so needed more. And although the efficiency 4 enchantment wouldn't let me insta break the pumpkins, it was noticeably quicker. We'd see if it'd take me an entire day to collect all of the pumpkins. Well, the answer is possibly. I got halfway through the farm, but my axe broke. Normally it had the durability to harvest the entire farm, but I guess since we'd re-enchanted it, it didn't have the unbreaking 2 anymore. So I had to buy another one from the toolsmith, head back to my enchanting setup, disenchant the thing, and then re-enchant it. And I got Silk Touch and efficiency 3. Not exactly what I wanted, so instead what I did was go back to the trade hall, make a few iron blocks, and then with the iron blocks and the iron ingots left over, I made an anvil. Then I traded a few of the pumpkins and bought an axe. Then I combined the Unbreaking 2 diamond axe we just bought and the Silk Touch and efficiency 3 diamond axe we'd enchanted to get a Silk Touch efficiency 3 Unbreaking 2 diamond axe. It was a bit of a mouthful. And then go back to the pumpkin farm to pick up where we left off. I'd be surprised if I got all of them collected by the end of the night now. I didn't. I was still going on the morning of day 60. I put pumpkin farming on pause for a little bit. I had other things to attend to. That was getting more villagers. I'd taken brewing stands from the villagers we'd been to, and I put 2 in place in hopes we could get 2 clerics. Unfortunately, I wasn't sure which villager was assigned to the 2 brewing stands we placed, so I sort of had to let them all out. Once I knew who they were, I just needed to trap them in place. As for the other villagers, the floodgates were open, so I just sort of left them to it. As long as they didn't interfere with trading, I didn't care what they did. I got them both to expert level. One of them didn't have the trade I wanted, which is unfortunate. The other one did, ender pearls, and I bought all of them from him. Then I waited for him to reset his trades. Unfortunately for the one who didn't sell ender pearls, I didn't have space for him, so he had to be eliminated. So I replaced the brewing stand and got another cleric set up like the other one had never been there. This one complied. I left the trade hall behind to go collect sand, and as you can see, it wasn't just dirt my shovel could insta-break. Then I went down to do some mining. I wanted to get some more iron. At 62, I was back in my house. I put together an auto smelter and then build the thing up with the sand we'd collected from before. My aim was to get a lot of glass. Next I rowed out on a boat away from the base until I was in the middle of the ocean. Then I towered up until I was sure I was high enough that no mobs would be spawning down below. Then I made a platform for what would house a mob spawner, except phantoms spawned and tried to knock me off. However, they didn't realise I now had a bow, and my aim never missed. I also built the base of the mob spawner, and then I jumped. Day 63, I went back to base. I needed to restock on supplies. Noticed my pale trees hadn't grown, so obviously I was doing something wrong. I'd have to read up about them at some point. I had no way of getting back up to the mob farm, so I had to use ladders. Once up at the mob farm, all I needed to do now was to actually build the thing. I started with the drop shaft first. Once the drop shaft was in place, the next thing to do would be to start on the first layer. However, knowing my luck, a phantom would come along and knock me off and kill me. And stupidly, I'd forgotten to bring a bed. So as inconvenient it was, I did take the return trip home. If it was regular survival, I'd say fuck it, but being hardcore, I just didn't want to risk it. I woke the shepherd up to buy a bed from him. Only joking, they're not allowed to sleep here. Then I did the old sleep in bed for a sec trick to reset the phantom counter. Going up the ladder like this sort of looks like we're going towards a sand portal. I put the bed up by the mob spawner, and then to throw everyone's OCD off, placed a portal that was not dead center to the path. Getting to and from this place was an absolute pain. Without an elytra, getting to and from this place was a pain. Even with an elytra, it'd be a bit of an inconvenience. The nether portal was to provide quick travel to and from the base. I didn't know where the other portal was in this place. It was here somewhere, and quite frankly, now wasn't the time to search. I just wanted to check on the spawn. Although just as the night came to an end, I'd realised I'd forgotten the water buckets. Day 64, I thought while I'm up at the mob spawner, I might as well put in the collection system. And then as much as I didn't want to, I was going to have to go back to the base. I needed to get a couple of water buckets. Back up at the mob spawner, I made an infinity pool, just in case I accidentally wasted the water. and then I returned to work at the mob spawner, building out the first layer. I have to admit, it's been a while since I've made one of these, after making so many in my time. It was like riding a bike. Once you know how, you never forget. The aim wasn't to make the best mob spawner in the world, I just wanted to make something that worked. Yeah, there are a lot more efficient designs out there that I know would be better. However, this farm was easy to make and I knew it would serve my purpose, and that's all I needed. The next day, the focus was to build the farm up, adding additional layers. The aim was to get 4, only for the reason that I'd only brought enough trapdoors for 4 layers. But I lied. Turns out on day 66 I found I had actually bought enough trapdoors for 6 layers. Now I wasn't sure if I had enough blocks on me for 6 layers. I didn't have enough blocks, so no change here, I had to go back to the base again. When I did return, it was just a case of getting a lid on the thing. I left out 1 block purposely. After I put torches on the roof, I'll tell you why. I needed to prevent mobs from spawning up here, otherwise it would completely ruin the point of the mob spawner. Then I went through the hole and replaced the cobblestone block. Now I was inside the mob spawner. From there, I removed the torches one by one. I'd left them in so mobs wouldn't spawn as I was building the thing. Then I'd descend a layer and do the same thing. On the last layer, I mined out the side, made a little platform, and covered the hole back in again. Then I placed a water bucket, sat in a water bucket, mined out the 2 blocks I'd placed, removed the water, and descended. Landed nicely on the platform. On the morning of day 67, I saw a sight I was really wanting to see. A mob spawner that was working. And I was going to be getting some gunpowder, exactly why I made the farm. Like I said before, it wasn't the most efficient mob farm, but it served its purpose well. I decided to stay at the mob spawner for the day. Prepare to be impressed. After a day's work at the mob farm, I had a stack and a half of gunpowder. Doesn't seem like much, I know. All I need it for is some fireworks, and a stack and a half is more than enough. Now that the mob farm had been built, we could focus on other things. The glass had been smelting nicely. I took a load out, and then went through to the nether. I was a little bit confused about my spawn, but then I remembered I'd made the portals like this. I wanted to find a fortress. I had a brief look around the terrain to see if I could see anything, but nothing. So I picked a random direction and then started to head in a straight line. Although it was a bit scuffed, this was going to be the start of a nether road, and had been the reason why I wanted the glass, because mobs wouldn't spawn on it. And just a little behind the scenes information, I was terrified about being over a lava lake. Ugh, there's just so many things that could go wrong, but at least I had my gold helmet. That'd keep me safe. Plan to find the fortress was simple. It was the same plan I always did. Head in a straight line until I found one. Once I got to a soul sand valley, I decided to turn around. I felt vulnerable. I didn't want to get shot off my path by a skeleton or blasted into the heavens by a ghast. I just wanted the chill life. Unfortunately, I was in the wrong place for that. Next day, I was still nervously searching for a fortress. My hope is that I'd find one within the first few minutes of searching, but that was not how it was turning out to be. And the longer I spent here, the more on edge I felt. Not from nerves, obviously. Excitement. Pure adrenaline. An absolute junkie when it comes to that stuff. Again, like last time, when I got to a soul sand valley, I decided to turn around and head back. That's 2 directions I'd now come out from the portal and fallen short. Surely this would be 3rd time lucky, right? Well, we're yet to find out. I ran out of glass. I could have continued the path with netherrack or some other block, but the spawn proofing of the glass was something I really wanted to keep. I went back home and checked on the auto smelter. There was a few more stacks of glass I could use. I don't know how far it was realistically going to get us, but it was better than nothing. Day 70, the search for a nether fortress continued. I didn't find one, but I did find a soul sand valley, and I was not going out there. 1 direction left. But then a gas came and fucked it up, so I had to run back. But I guess I accidentally looked at Enderman too, because he was chasing after me. It was a bit nerve-wracking because both of them disappeared. I just sort of ran back to where I was. Ah, I found him. He was below. So I ran again. But he didn't seem to be teleporting up to me. So I don't know if he could. Oh, he definitely could. I got into a spot where I was able to kill him. Definitely had not been scared. I went back to work. I got the Hot Tourist Destination achievement. Again, like always, by accident. Eventually I got to a Basalt Delta biome, and I did think about keep on ploughing through, but lava was spilling out at me, so I just didn't want the hassle. I didn't normally do this, but I decided to go freestyle and go off the beaten track, see if we could hunt down a fortress. I was placing torches as I went, so I'll be able to find my way back to the path. I found nothing, so I followed my torches back to my road. I made it back to my portals. I decided to continue along one of the paths I'd given up on, even if it was a soul sand valley. I hope I wouldn't regret this. I almost regret it. and after that scare I decided maybe it's not worth it. Not while I didn't have an elytra. I decided to branch off from my path over a lava lake. Don't know if that's a better choice than the Soul Sand Valley, but I wasn't going to get hit off by skeletons, that's for sure. Although I ran out of glass. I didn't have much to spare at home, and once I collected a large quantity, who knows how long it'd take to smelt, especially for the quantity I seem to be needing. So I decided to switch over to netherrack. At a later date I'll be able to transform the path to glass. I'll be honest, I'd been beginning to lose all hope. But when all hope was lost, I found myself the fortress. Unfortunately, my pickaxe broke, so I decided to head back. I had to go back down to the trade hall as well, and it was chaotic to say the least. I was back down there because I had to buy another diamond pick. And yes, like the other one, I did disenchant it, and then enchant it. I got efficiency 4 unbreaking 3 again. I was happy. Back in the nether, I ran back in the direction I thought the nether fortress was. It's confusing to tell, it all looks the same to me after a while. Made it onto the fortress, and didn't get an achievement. Why didn't I get an achievement? I got an achievement. Oh. Well, I walked off for whatever reason. And ended up down here. But I was on the outside of the fortress. I needed to get inside. Mine through the roof. And dropped in. Find a wither skeleton. And it dropped a wither skull. That is insane luck. Found some nether wart in the chest. I found a blaze, but one wasn't going to cut it. I needed a few. I got 5 of them, so I worked my way back through the maze of the nether fortress. Found a magma slime outside, so I killed him and got myself a magma cream, which is exactly what I'd wanted. I'd planned to go to the Basalt Delta biome I'd found a while ago, but now I had a magma cream. I didn't need to do that. And that's because using blaze powder as fuel and nether wart as a catalyst, we could convert water bottles into awkward potions. And then using that said magma cream, further convert the awkward potions into potions of fire resistance, giving us the ability to not take any damage from fire or lava for 3 minutes. And by using redstone dust, we can convert that 3 minutes into 8 minutes. I'll be honest, having these 3 potions made me feel a lot safer. Also, we were able to use some blaze powder and an ender pearl to create an Eye of Ender.
Day 74, I needed to get some obsidian. I didn't think I had any, but I checked the chests anyway. I didn't. I think I'd spent them all on nether portals. So I needed to find some more. I was going with the same strat as I'd used before. Find a lava pool, turn it into obsidian, mine that obsidian. I found one not too far from the first village we'd ever found in this world, except I forgot my water buckets. Half a day later I returned. However, because it was starting to get dark, rather than convert the lava into obsidian and start mining straight away, I thought it better to place torches so we could prevent mob spawns, and then we could mine the obsidian without being interrupted every 2 seconds. Once I was fairly confident I was going to be safe and not be interrupted, I got to work. I got almost a stack and a half from that. Definitely overkill, but I was bound to need it at some point, mark my words. I was on my way back to the base, but then I remembered I had 58 crafting tables on me, so I chucked one down and made the item I'd been needing the obsidian to craft in the first place, an ender chest. Now I'd have access to a second inventory space. I forgot I didn't have a silk touch diamond pick. However, I did have a silk touch diamond hoe. I'd never used a hoe to pick up an ender chest before. I wasn't even sure it would work, but it did. I crafted Eyes of Ender to go to the end. I had 1 leftover blaze powder. I was able to use ender pearls from the trade hall to craft 1 last Eye of Ender. That gave us a total of 8 Eyes of Ender. It wasn't going to be enough to both find the stronghold and activate the portal to go through to the end, so I was only going to focus on finding the stronghold portal. After that, if we needed more, we'd need to get some. I try not to sleep where I can help it because I feel like it's a waste of a day, so this really hurt me to do, but I felt it was going to be a lot easier finding the stronghold while the sun was out. Day 76, I found my first ruined portal of the world. The chest there was mediocre. In the background, although it was hard to see, there's some pillagers watching me. They'd be kind of a pain to deal with, again because of the raid captain. I don't want to instigate a raid when I get home, so I just ignored them and took the obsidian. Day 77. I'd finally gotten a result from the Eye of Enders. The stronghold was somewhere in this area. Somewhere. It took several additional throws to be absolutely certain where the stronghold was, but once I was certain, I mined down into the earth, with a sole objective of not seeing sunlight again until I found that stronghold. I got a bit concerned I wasn't going to find it when I reached Deep Slate, but then I thought no, strongholds can definitely generate within Deep Slate, just got to trust the process. Almost immediately after, almost reassuringly, I heard lava, so I turned the game subtitles subtitles on, and then minding the direction the subtitles told me the lava was at, hoping it was inside the stronghold. It wasn't in the stronghold. It looked to be a concealed lava lake. I'd gotten my hopes up for this as well. I wouldn't give up. I was going to keep going down into the earth until I found it. Further down, I hit a more promising lead. I heard silverfish, and silverfish only came from one place I knew of, the stronghold portal room. I still had subtitles on, so like the lava, all I'd need to do was follow the direction the subtitles told me. And I did in fact find it. This is the only time I find Minecraft subtitles helpful. I blocked the entrance, filled in all of the lava, and placed torches to lighten a now darkened room. I had 4 Eyes of Ender left to my name, and as you can clearly see, it wasn't enough to activate the portal. There wasn't a single Eye of Ender already in there, so I'd need another 8. I made a nether portal, and went through to check out the spawn. I'd spawned inside a crimson forest, probably the same crimson forest my other 2 portals were at.
We'd have to find out another time. It was now day 78 and I needed to head back up to the surface. Needed to head back to the base in the overworld. Why not go back through the nether when it'd be a lot quicker? Well, because I didn't have my coordinates for the base portal. While I might have slept during the night on the way to finding the stronghold, I wasn't going to do that on the way back. It was a waste of time. Not when I could use that time for travelling. I wasn't going to use up precious daylight hours. Besides, I wasn't scared of the dark. Back at home, all the glass had smelted. There was only one place to use that. While I hadn't known the coordinates of my home portal, I had taken out the coordinates of the stronghold portal. From my calculations, it should be down from here. In fact, it should have been exactly where I was standing. But it turns out I'd been looking at the wrong coordinates. After revising the coordinates, I should hit the stronghold portal if I head in this direction in a straight line. Now that I had a fire resistance potion, it didn't feel nearly as bad going over lava lakes like this. And way down below, next to that lava lake, was my stronghold portal. My only issue was going to be getting to the thing, but fortunately my glass path connected to one of the other paths I'd been using to search for a nether fortress, and from there, while it was still a bit of a drop, I could take some full damage and land on a tree. After that, it was just a case of carefully traversing the terrain to get down to the bottom. Down at the stronghold portal, I broke it and towered up on glass. And at exactly the same coordinates, with the exception of the Y coordinate, I made another nether portal. Lit the portal and then went through, and it came out at the stronghold portal. Then I headed back through to see if it's still connected to the nether portal, and it did. Now we had a newly connected nether portal to the stronghold that was at the same height as my road and all the other portals in the nether. However, without the Eyes of Ender I couldn't actually go to the end, so I figured while I was already in nether, I might as well head back to the nether fortress. However, I couldn't actually remember where my path was to get back to the fortress, but I had taken the coordinates, so I just sort of carved out another road, and I got there without pretty much any issue. Getting back to the blaze spawner was another issue. Once I found my torches, I knew I was close, so I popped a fire resistance potion and just waited for the blazes. I didn't have a looting enchantment, but I was going to do the best with what I had. By the time my session came to an end, I had 19 blaze rods. Now, I'm not an expert speedrunner, but even I knew 19 blaze rods would be more than enough to get to the end. Well, I was able to make 15 additional Eyes of Ender. Did I need that many? Absolutely not. But day 81, I just collected wood all day.
Day 82, today was the big day. I was going through my storage and prepping my ender chest, as well as my inventory. Here's a look at the firepower I was packing. I wanted to leave my hoe at home, but it was still the only thing I had with Silk Touch on, so it needed to come with me so I'd be able to pick up the ender chest. But as you can see from this clip, it's exceedingly slow. I also still needed an infinity enchantment on my bow. Back in the trade hall, I thought it was best to stock up on many arrows. Because of our nether road, getting back to the stronghold portal was a piece of cake. I now had the Eyes of Ender to be able to activate the portal to the end, and then I jumped through to fight with Destiny. That meant first bridging across the void to get to the end island, and then fighting the Ender Dragon itself. You've all seen the Ender Dragon fight before, it was nothing special. I'd run around, using my bow and arrow to target the end crystals that would continuously heal the Ender Dragon, all the while avoiding eye contact with the Enderman. And then once I did that, I got on top of a pillar and continuously shot at the dragon with my bow. The beast was defeated on day 83. I did think about postponing the fight until day 100, like I see other 100-day YouTubers do, but I had shit to do, I couldn't be hanging around. I'd beaten the dragon, but now there was a problem of an angry Enderman.
So I put down water because I knew he hated it, and then I waited for him to come close. But he kept moving around, so I tried putting him in a boat, and then I could kill him. I collected the XP to level me up. I didn't have any ender pearls to go through the portal to the end island, so I just sort of aggroed a few endermen. After all the angry ones had been killed, I stayed under my platform for a little bit longer to see if any more had aggroed onto me. I left once I was sure the coast was clear. Unfortunately for me, the portal to the end islands was above the void. I don't like it when they spawn like this. I made a little dirt platform, just in case the moment of truth wasn't very truthful. That was to chuck an enderpearl in and hope for the best. And we made it. And we were lucky enough that our gateway home was so close to an end city. I've never been this fortunate. It didn't have a boat, so my fiery passion was extinguished a little bit. But that didn't mean I couldn't raid it for shulker shells, yeah? Of course, the ender chest I found within the end city I took. Again, relying on the diamond hoe. What else would you want? I left the end city behind. Shulkers were nice, but I wanted an elytra. That's why I'd really come to the end. And as if my prayers had been answered, not that far away from the first city was a second end city, and a boat front and centre. Unfortunately, it was slap bang above the void. I was going to have to start behaving like an adult at some point. Now was that time. I'd made a dirt staircase and was going to bridge over to the boat, but then my paranoia set in and told me that an enderman was going to take out a block as I was bridging. So that's where the wood came in from my ender chest. Wood in hand, I felt a bit more confident staircasing and bridging out over the void. Although at one point as I was staircasing up, I accidentally hit my mouse scroll and went to an ender pearl and threw that downwards. Lucky it went into my planks and not the void. The main concern as I got closer to the boat was would I get hit by shulkers. But as I got closer, I just used my bow to pick them off. Shulkers taken care of, I boarded the ship, went in, killed the shulker, and took what I'd came for. The elytra. Obviously I equipped that bad boy straight away. I also found the spire armor trim. And some more diamonds. And a better shovel. This one had mending. The shoes were better as well. They had protection 4 and unbreaking 3 instead of protection 3. They went on in place of the others. And then with some of the paper and some of the gunpowder, I made some fireworks. Before I took my first flight, seeing as we're up high, it seemed like a good opportunity to scan the terrain for other end cities, hoping for more boats. The one you could see in the background was the one we first visited. I couldn't see any others and I didn't feel like raiding this fully for the shulkers. I decided to take the flight home. Finding an end gate home. I'd accidentally aggroed an enderman, so I had to be kind of careful. We just went into the portal and went home. Next day, I was at the enchanting setup. I wanted to enchant the new elytra, and nothing. I guess I couldn't do it at an enchanting table. Something I didn't know. So rather than waste its durability, I decided to put my elytra into my ender chest. I'd been wearing my chest plate for this long, I could do it a bit longer. I checked in on the villager breeder, and it turned out there was only the 2 villagers in the boat left. Set the villagers free, gave them the bread, and I knew they'd do the rest. Except they just gave it back to me. Where if they thought I was going to breed with them, they had another thing coming. Because it was daytime, I had things to do. And that was to be working back at the pumpkin farm. I needed emeralds to trade with librarians. Librarians I would be getting. And we'd need a lot of emeralds because librarians were expensive. I mean, as per usual, it was a full day affair. So the next day, it's no surprise I was still at it. Until my axe broke, that is. Down in the trade hall, I bought another axe. And then I traded my pumpkins for emeralds. Then with the money, I bought a load of bookshelves. I made a load of lecterns, and you're probably expecting me to place them inside the trade hall, but no, not yet. I had another axe to disenchant, and then re-enchant. Unbreaking 3, and only Unbreaking 3. A slight improvement still, because the axe had been bought from the villager with Unbreaking 2. Day 87. I bought more bookshelves from a librarian, and then again I converted all of them into lecterns. I wanted to have enough so we could make all the librarians we wanted. Looking at the pumpkin farm, it was great obviously because there were a load of pumpkins, but I wanted to tidy the place up a little bit. I extended each patch out so they were all the same length, because while they finished at the same point, they didn't start at it. They then planted pumpkin seeds into the extensions, and then make a border around the outside. The border was to be made of jungle planks, because it was a block I had a lot of. That's partially because we didn't use nearly as many as I thought we would in the end. But I had to put it on pause when morning came round. I wanted to get all of the lecterns into place, start turning all the villagers I had into librarians. The goal wasn't to actually look at their trades yet, it was simply to get as many of them into librarians, and then trap as many of them as possible into their cubbyholes when they stand next to the job site block. Of course, every group has their idiots, and this lot couldn't seem to figure out that the job site blocks they were trying to get to were in the trade hall building number 2. All they had to do was walk around, but no, they insisted on trying to walk through the walls. I trapped more than half of them now, which was good, but still there were a good fair few of the lecterns that were free. I didn't want to check their trades just yet, I just stuck with the one I bought bookshelves from. because if enchanted books were what I needed, then I'd need regular books to go alongside emeralds to purchase them. Once night time hit, there was no point hanging around the villagers, so I went back to creating a border around the pumpkin farm. There was lots of love going on bright and early, and I didn't think it was enough. As much as I wanted to convert more of them into librarians, I had a pumpkin patch to farm, and with 0 efficiency enchantments, I was certain I was going to be doing this by the next day. And I was right. By the next day, I was only just over halfway through the farm. Not being able to insta-break the pumpkins meant it was a huge time sink when it came to harvesting them. By the time I'd finished, it was turning night time. Not that it mattered when it came to trading, they'd always wait up for me. The villager breeder was now at full capacity, so same story as last time. Placed down a boat, trapped a couple of villagers inside. These would remain in the boat to prevent the population from becoming 0. Then, I opened all of the gates, the trapdoors, and left with my trap in place. Then I watched the moon descend into the horizon. It was a serene moment. The next day I wanted to go through the librarians to see what trades they had. Any I didn't want, I just ignored. I'd change them at a later date. I got Silk Touch, I got Protection 4, Respiration 3, Channeling, Lure 3, and that was it. Already we were getting a fresh batch of villagers fall into the trap. So I opened the gates to release them, and again they flew out. I also turned the new arrivals into librarians. Then I went through their trades. We got Knockback 2, Flame, 7 different enchantments that I actually wanted out of all the librarians we'd gotten. I went back to my home and decided it was time to take out the dirt. I can't say it was a massive improvement, but it was still an improvement, and you know I'm all about those 1% gains. Day 93, it's no surprise I was back down in the trade hall, trapping villagers into their cubby holes. I got every cubby hole filled with a librarian, which meant in the breeder I could shut the trap doors and close the gates. Any of the remaining jobless villagers down in the trade hall roaming about like they owned the place were no longer needed. Then I went through them one at a time once again to see what they had to offer. The villagers with the books I wanted to keep, I closed the trapdoors. The villagers with the books I didn't want to keep, I left the trapdoors open. That way, when I came to reset the villagers' trades, I knew which ones to reset. The next day, I wanted to make a start on those trade resets. And because I had the same number of villagers as I did lecterns, it meant when I broke one, the same villager would over and over again become that librarian for that job site block. It speeds up the process dramatically. By the time the sun had gone down, I'd got 6 additional books I wanted. Thorns 3, Featherfalling 4, Infinity, Fire Aspect 2, Mending, and Frostwalker 2.
Day 94, I was in the trade hall again, resetting librarian trades for trades I wanted, trying to search out all those enchanted books. Again, only the ones I wanted. By the end of the trading session, these are the enchants I'd got. Punch 2, Luck of the Sea 3, Respiration 3, Breach 4, Looting 3. Embarrassingly, I'd forgot to record day 95, but it was much of the same thing.
Surprise, surprise, the next day I was back at the trade hall resetting librarian trades. It's like every single day is the same at the moment. Ah, what an anticlimactic home run this is for the video. It was a bit of a lackluster day. I only got Aqua Affinity and Impaling 5 as my new enchantments. Again, the next day I did exactly the same thing. Is that a shock? Absolutely not. I know it's boring to watch, but it was also boring to do. To get all of the enchantments I wanted through librarians, it's a long process. Takes quite a bit of grinding, but it's always worth it for a long time world. And once we could fully enchant all our gear with top-notch enchants, we'd be able to properly dominate the world and take on some crazy projects. That day I got Smite 5, Sharpness 5, Last Protection 4, and Projectile Protection 4. The 2 big ones I was still searching for was Unbreaking 3 and Efficiency 5. They're typically the last enchants I get when scouring through librarian trades.
Day 98, I was in the trade hall resetting librarian trades. These are the enchants I got. Loyalty 3, Power 5, Depth Strider 3. As I'd often been doing recently, I spent the night pumpkin farming. Day 99, look where I was again. By the end of that day, I got Density 5, Sweeping Edge 3, and Fire Protection 4.
Day 100, the last day of this video. I needed to spend more time with the librarians, but honestly, seeing as it was the last day, I didn't really want to. I just sort of wanted to have a nice chilled day doing, well, kind of nothing. The pale trees still hadn't grown, and I hadn't looked into why. There's something for 200 days, probably. The villager population in the breeder wasn't the highest it's ever been, but the community here was still as strong as ever. Although you've seen this on multiple occasions, the section of the jungle my base sat was a lot clearer than when we'd begun. The pumpkin farm was large, but really, I could probably see myself making this several times as large. Having a chilled day meant there wasn't really much to do. I rode out to the mob spawner. Portal reminded me I needed to connect it to my other 2 portals within the nether. I decided to spend the very chill day just killing mobs. There we go, there it is. That is the sun rising on day 101. And that marks the end of this 100 days video. It's time to go on to 200 days. Bye.